come out, published by the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. It is a new, old book. It is actually a very old book, or a collection of old writings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, in the Bengali language. Prabhupada was writing articles for a magazine that he produced in Calcutta called the Gaudiya Patrika. And he wrote articles in the late 1940s, early 1950s, which have been compiled and translated by Sarvabhavana Prabhu and edited by Bhakti Charu Maharaj. And now this book has come out in the English language. So I've been actually very thrilled myself to read what Prabhupada wrote so long ago, because it shows Srila Prabhupada's preaching vision. It was burning even in those days, during his householder time, before there was any clear plan to leave India and come to the West. Srila Prabhupada was very enthusiastically trying to push on the mission of his spiritual master, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. Now, the section that I'm going to read from is called The Deluded Thinkers. This is towards the end of the book. In this section, which was written, I believe, in 1954, this particular section. So in this section, Srila Prabhupada deals with contemporary means at that time, in the 1950s. There were philosophers who were well known, not only in India but all around the world. Supposedly they were authorities in Hinduism. Such philosophers, you may have heard these names, Sri Aurobindo and Ramana Maharshi and Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishna. Now in this section that we're going to read tonight and hopefully tomorrow night, each evening that I'm here, because it's quite a long section, Srila Prabhupada is dealing with Dr. Radhakrishnan. Dr. Radhakrishnan was Vice President of India at the time of this writing. So he was a very, very important figure, not only in philosophy but in politics. So we shall read Srila Prabhupada's uncompromising stance. It's good to keep that in mind, the position of this man, Dr. Radhakrishnan. And you see how straightforward Prabhupada is in his writing about this man's philosophy. So without further ado, I will begin. Also, after reading some of this book, which is entitled Renunciation Through Wisdom, translated from Bengali, Vairagya Vidya. And after reading a section of this book, then I want to conclude by reading from the Krishna book. Srila Prabhupada said in the evening we should hear the Krishna book. I don't know how rigorously the devotees follow this rule anymore, but I remember when I joined this it was a great principle in temple life that we hear Krishna book before taking rest in the evening. So I'm taking this chance to revive that old policy. Every temple I go, I'm doing like this, reading Krishna book. So now we will begin with this selection from the Deluded Thinkers. Once one of the brahmacharis of our ashram met Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, who is a spiritualist of sorts and an erudite scholar. Dr. Radhakrishnan is the Vice President of India as I write this essay. On meeting him, our brahmachari received from him a copy of his Bhagavad Gita as a gift. Dr. Radhakrishnan had translated this Gita into English and had written a commentary on it, and it sold well in the market for 10 rupees in those days, in 1954. The brahmachari read the book and came to us a little dissatisfied, though the book itself was deeply esoteric. The reason for his dissatisfaction was that Dr. Radhakrishnan's writing lacked spiritual insight. In many places he had mishandled and misinterpreted the text, and thus he had made his book unacceptable to spiritualists in the line of pure devotion. This is a perfect example of the Srimad Bhagavatam's statement that by him even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion. Bhuyanti Surya. When the Lord so easily bewilders Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Lord Indra, and other great universal controllers, it is not at all surprising that Dr. Radhakrishnan is placed into illusion. The brahmachari was especially shocked and hurt by Dr. Radhakrishnan's misinterpretation of text 34 of chapter 9, which appears in his book on page 254. He came to us very depressed, wanting to discuss this passage. The following words were found in the book, quote, "It is not to the personal Krishna whom we have to give ourselves up utterly, but the unborn, beginningless, eternal, who speaks through Krishna." End of quote. We have not the slightest intention of confronting a world-famous philosopher like Dr. Radhakrishnan with arguments. Yet on the brahmachari's repeated request, we have to scrutinize the text and point out the discrepancies. We have great respect for Dr. Radhakrishnan, not only because he is the vice president of our country, but also because of his scholarship and his position as an erudite master of Hindu philosophy. Furthermore, he is faithful to the Brahminical tradition he hails from, and is a follower of the Mayavad school. Going by the oft-quoted dictum that it is better to have a learned enemy than a foolish friend, I feel encouraged in this matter. An intelligent opponent will present reasonable rebuttals, but an ignorant friend may bring about disaster with his floundering. Therefore, we feel no compunction about strongly arguing against the points Dr. Radhakrishnan makes in his Bhagavad Gita commentary. A well-known Bengali saying goes, after reading the whole Ramayana, do you want to know whose father Sita is? This question is ludicrous since Sita is Lord Rama's wife, and thus such a query will naturally invite quips and laughter. We find the same absurdity in Dr. Radhakrishnan's English commentary on the Gita. He writes that we do not have to surrender to the person Krishna, but to the unborn, beginningless, eternal within Krishna. This implies that Lord Krishna and his inner self are two separate identities. According to Dr. Radhakrishnan, since there is a difference between Krishna's body and his soul, we must surrender to Krishna's soul and not his body. This new discovery in the field of religious philosophy reminds us of the pundit of the Ramayana referred to above. Lord Sri Krishna's sole purpose in speaking the Bhagavad Gita is to convince us to surrender to his lotus feet. Yet right at the outset, Dr. Radhakrishnan is unwilling to accept this point. Lord Krishna gives the central instruction in the Bhagavad Gita 1866, Sarva dharman prityaja mamekam sharanam braja aham tvam sarvabhaptevyo mokshayishami masuchaha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. Lord Krishna spoke these words to Arjuna so that he would surrender to him. The Sanskrit word sharanam in this Gita text means surrender. On page 62 of his introductory essay, Dr. Radhakrishnan has also discussed the idea of surrender in some detail. He writes, and again, quote, Prapati, surrender, has the following accessories: goodwill will to all, anukulyasya sankalpa. And secondly, absence of ill will, pratikulyasya varjana. Thirdly, faith that the Lord will protect, rakshishyatiti vishvasha. Fourth, resort to him as Savior, goptukve varana. Fifth, a sense of utter helplessness, karpanyam. And sixth, complete surrender, atma nikshepa. These six, this is the end of quote, now Prabhupada is writing, these six limbs of surrender should be followed in relation to Krishna or Vishnu, because this instruction on the process of surrender appears in a Vaishnava scripture. Dr. Radhakrishnan has translated the first limb, anukulyasya sankalpa, as goodwill to all. Question: is it possible to surrender to everyone? Surrender should be directed towards the Supreme Lord alone. Dr. Radhakrishnan's proposal is impractical and indeed impossible. Long before Dr. Radhakrishnan wrote his commentary, many realized spiritual preceptors, including the famous Goswamis of Vrindavan, explained that the words anukulyasya sankalpa mean that one should render transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord, Krishna, favorably. No genuine scholar would be willing to disregard all other spiritual authorities and accept Dr. Radhakrishnan's version. So just as a short comment, Dr. Radhakrishnan is not only a philosopher, but he's a politician. So politicians who dabble in religion, generally what they're trying to do is to enlist people's religious sentiments, which they actually look down upon. They think that the masses are foolish to be so sentimental as to adhere to religious principles. But they see that that's useful sentiment, if it can be diverted to some social cause. So Dr. Radhakrishnan has translated this term, anukulyasya sankalpa, which has a very specific meaning. It's defined by Srila Rupa Goswami in the Nectar of Devotion and in the Nectar of Instruction. Sankalpa means state of mind, and anukulyasya means favorable. So one has to have a favorable state of mind in devotional service to Krishna. This is the same thing that Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita by the term priti purvakam, the method of love. You should serve me, tesham satapa yuktanam bhajitam. You should serve me always, 24 hours a day, by the method of love, priti purvakam. In other words, our service to Krishna should not be mechanical, but we should be thinking of Krishna favorably within our hearts, and praying that he will accept our service. This draws the Lord's loving attention to his devotee, and Krishna goes on to say that in return for this, he will give his devotee from within the heart all the knowledge that he may need to become free from this material world and go back home, back to Godhead. Even if by material calculation the devotee is a dullard, you see, doesn't have much brain power, much, as they say in computer language, much RAM up in his head. It doesn't matter. By the loving sentiment of the devotee, Krishna responds. He's the origin of all knowledge, so he can easily deliver what knowledge is needed to become free from Maya and go back home, back to Godhead. So this is the true meaning of anukulyasya sankalpa. But Dr. Radhakrishnan has translated to mean goodwill to all. Nice socialist dictum. Should have favorable attitude towards everyone. Treat everyone the same. Okay? Now that may be very good social, moral philosophy, but it is also what we call sub-religious principle. This is like, Prabhupada gives the example of watering the branches and leaves and fruits and flowers of a tree or plant, but ignoring the root. goodwill to all. So let us water all the leaves and flowers and so on. But that plant will die if you fail to put water on the root. And if you put water on the root and you don't need to put water on the leaves and flowers, that's a big waste of water. It's sufficient to put water on the root. So similarly, it is sufficient to become Krishna's loving, pure devotee. To love Krishna, to serve Krishna, and in this way Krishna reciprocates by purifying the devotee from within and bringing him up to the spiritual platform. Because when the devotee comes to this spiritual platform, then Krishna has said in Bhagavad Gita, Yat Gatva Napunavaham Evam Yashashi Pandava Yena Bhutani Yasheshani Drakshashi Atmani Yato Mahi. And then when you come to this platform of pure Krishna consciousness, and all ignorance has been destroyed in the heart, then you will actually see all living entities as they really are. Now, the good-hearted socialist or philanthropist, welfare worker, he has some sentiment to do good for others, but he doesn't really know who these others are, because he's only seeing material bodies. So he thinks, let me do good for others, Swedish persons, or maybe a little broader, other Europeans, or maybe even more broad, all of humanity. He may even go that far. I'm a humanitarian, so I try to work for the benefit of all human beings everywhere. Very nice. But because he's seeing the body only, then he thinks it's all right to exploit other living beings for the sake of humanity. So work for humanity and slaughter the cow, and let humanity eat the cow's flesh and become fat. This is welfare work. This is his vision. So this is very lopsided, and ultimately it's a very demoniac vision. So one may have this sentiment, I want to do good for all, but he can't see all because he's only seeing matter. So Krishna says, if you become my pure devotee, then you will actually see all living entities. How? As being my parts and parcels. So, anyway, Srila Prabhupada is correcting the great Dr. Radhakrishna in his translation. So to continue, when Dr. Radhakrishna uses the words faith in the Lord, he definitely refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By what logic does he say Lord, but mean the impersonal Brahman? Arjuna certainly means the person Krishna when he says, Sishyate ham shadi mam tvam prapanam, I am your disciple and soul surrendered unto you, please instruct me. With these words he addresses Krishna at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. At this stage of the Gita, the impersonal Brahman is still to be discussed. When the subject of the impersonal Brahman is finally raised, Lord Krishna unequivocally declares that he is the source of the impersonal Brahman. Sound logic says that one cannot surrender to something impersonal and formless. Those who are overly attached to the impersonal Brahman will find surrendering to this formless concept very painful and indeed impossible. And if they persist along this path, they will end up surrendering to their wife, family, and relatives. So there's a subheading. Transcendental devotional service reveals the real form of the Lord. We hear from the Srimad Bhagavatam that, due to Maya, which makes the living entity fall down from spiritual practice, certain obnoxious atheists try hard to create a smoke screen of philosophical jargon around the Supreme Lord to keep him hidden from the general populace. The result of this effort is also described in the Bhagavatam, in Canto 12, Chapter 3, Text 43, Kalo Narajan Jagatam Param Gurun Triloka Nata Pada Pankajam Prayena Martya Bhagavantam Achyutam Yapshanti Pashanda Vibhina Chetasaha. O king, in this age of Kali, people's intelligence will be diverted by atheism, and they will almost never offer sacrifice to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Supreme Spiritual Master of the universe. Although the great personalities who control the three worlds all bow down to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, the petty and miserable human beings of this age will not do so. A good example of such philosophical jargon meant to bewilder the public is Dr. Radhakrishna's translating Anukulyasya Sankalpa as goodwill to all, instead of surrendering to the Supreme Lord its proper meaning. Such an interpretation is what we can expect from a mundane scholar. The first word in devotional service is surrender. The only meaning of surrender is to accept that one is a servant of God. Even great scholars and philosophers like Dr. Radhakrishnan will have to perform heaps of austerities and penances before they will yield to the process of surrender. This is the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita. Dr. Radhakrishnan's explanation of the 6 limbs of surrender is superficial. Originally defined in a Vaishnava text, these 6 limbs of surrender pertain to Lord Vishnu or Krishna. Anukulya means loving devotion to Lord Krishna. The Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu states, Anukulyena Krishnanushilana Bhakti Uttama. One should render transcendental loving service to Lord Krishna favorably. That is called pure devotional service. Everyone in the world is rendering service to Lord Krishna in one way or another. Some are doing it favorably and others antagonistically. Those who are serving unfavorably are inimical atheists, the foolish non-devotees, while those who do it with pleasure are truly intelligent. In other words, the devotees of Krishna are very intelligent, while the mundane scholars are in the same category as the non-devotee atheists led by the demons Kamsa and Jarasandha. The main instruction in the Bhagavad Gita is to take complete shelter of Lord Krishna. Yet this cardinal conclusion, which emanated from Lord Krishna's own lotus lips, is reversed by Dr. Radhakrishnan when he writes that one should surrender not to the person Krishna, but to the unborn, beginningless, eternal who speaks through Krishna. It is an exercise in futility to take up the Gita for discussion only in order to ostentatiously display one's erudition and thus to foolishly misinterpret the text so much that one concludes that the speaker of Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna, is a mere mortal. This use of Vedic knowledge to pronounce that God does not exist is a clear example of serving Krishna unfavorably. How does Lord Krishna describe scholars like Dr. Radhakrishnan who propagate atheism in the name of the Vedas? In the Bhagavad Gita 7.15 we find this statement, Namam Duskritina Mudha Prapadyante Naradana Maya Prahita Jnana Asurim Balamashrita. Those miscreants who are grossly foolish, who are lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake in the atheistic nature of demons, do not surrender unto me. Enemies of the Lord, like Kamsa and Jarasandha, always meditate on Krishna, but unfavorably. Similarly to those demons are the atheistic scholars who always challenge and misrepresent the real teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. Though they think about the Lord, they do so with enmity, because their intelligence has been covered by Maya. Kamsa and Jarasandha were also erudite scholars, but because they were obsessed with Krishna and enmity, they were demons. We understand from Lord Chaitanya's teachings and exemplary actions that it is our duty to follow the instructions of the Bhagavad Gita favorably. During Lord Chaitanya's tour of South India, when he entered the premises of the Sri Ranganath temple, he came upon a simple Brahmana engrossed in reading the Bhagavad Gita. The Lord was overjoyed to see how attentively the Brahmana was reading and how tears were streaming down his cheeks. Other Brahmanas sitting nearby knew that he was illiterate, and so they wondered how he could possibly read the Gita. Lord Chaitanya easily solved this problem. He said that even an uneducated person can understand transcendental words if he is a fully surrendered soul. But without the mood of surrender, Bhagavad Gita remains incomprehensible. When Lord Chaitanya saw the Brahmana in tears, he asked him what part of the Gita moved him to cry. With proper Vaishnava humility, the Brahmana answered, I am merely pretending to read Gita. In truth, I am illiterate, but my Guru instructed me to regularly read the entire Bhagavad Gita, though I am unlettered. Not wanting to disobey my Guru, I try to execute my duty, and so I make a show of reading the Gita. The Lord then asked him why he was crying. Brahmana replied, whenever I sit down to read the Gita, the form of Lord Krishna as Partha Sarathi, Arjuna's chariot driver, appears in my heart. And as soon as I see this form, I immediately remember how the Lord is Bhakta Vatsala, especially kind to his devotees. This thought makes me cry. So this is a perfect example of what I mentioned before, Priti Purvaka, the method of love. This Brahmana could not even read, and yet out of love for his spiritual master and love for Krishna, he would sit in that temple with the Bhagavad Gita before him. And as Prabhupada once said in the lecture, he would simply turn the pages. He didn't understand what was on the pages, but he would try to read. And by remembering simply this one thing, that out of love for his devotee, Krishna, who is the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, took up the reins of Arjuna's chariot, became the servant of his devotee. So, thinking about this, that Brahmana began to cry. How much merciful the Lord is. That although he is supreme, he is transcendental, he is the Lord of everything, he is honored throughout the entire spiritual world, all the Vaikuntha planets, and by the perfected beings here in this material existence. They honor him as being the Lord. Nonetheless, for his devotee, he renders service. He becomes a servant. The Mayavadis are always eager to merge with the non-dual Supreme Brahman and become God. But their small brains cannot understand how the Supreme Personality of Godhead can become the charioteer of his devotee and carry out his orders. In truth, the Supreme Lord and the Jivas are eternally related. And because of this relationship, many wonderful things are possible. But the Mayavadis cannot understand this truth. And many who have tried to make them understand have failed miserably. In the Shrutis, Ekasvatara Upanishad 6.23, we find this statement, Yasya Devi Parabhaktir Yatha Deve Katha Virau Tasyaite Kotita Hi Harta Prakashante Mahatma. Only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master, all the imports of Vedic knowledge are automatically revealed. Upon seeing the devotion of the South Indian Brahmana, as he read the Gita, Lord Chaitanya embraced him and then told him that he had perfected the reading of the Gita. What fool would deny that Lord Chaitanya's approval is far superior to millions of university doctorates? This allocated from the Lord proves that the Bhagavad Gita cannot be studied with material intelligence. The knowledge of the Gita must be received through the chain of acharyas or spiritual masters coming down in disciplic succession. That is the only method. Otherwise, studying the Gita is an exercise in futility. The scriptural conclusion is that since the Supreme Lord is transcendental, his words are also transcendental, and hence the esoteric subject matter of the Bhagavad Gita can be received only through a disciplic succession that is equally transcendental. As the Padma Purana states, Atak Shri Krishna Namani Nabhavid Grayam Indrai Sevamukhe Hichivvatau Swayamevas Paratyada. No one can understand the transcendental nature of the name, form, quality, and pastimes of Shri Krishna through his materially contaminated senses. Only when one becomes spiritually situated by transcendental service to the Lord are the transcendental name, form, quality, and pastimes of the Lord revealed to him. This is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita 538. Premanjana Churita Bhakti Valochinena Santok Sadaiva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achincha Guna Swarupam Govindamani Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is Shama Sundara, Krishna himself, with inconceivable, innumerable attributes, whom the pure devotees see in their heart of hearts with the eye of devotion, tinged with the salve of love. Mundane philosophers like Dr. Radhakrishna are not qualified to delve into spiritual subjects. The devotees of the Lord are alone eligible to understand Lord Krishna. No one else is qualified. As Krishna himself states in the Bhagavad Gita 18:55, Bhaktyamam avijananti yavan yaschashmi tattvataha. One can understand me as I am, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by devotional service. Scholars like Dr. Radhakrishnan should understand that within Lord Krishna, there is only Lord Krishna and nothing else. Lord Krishna's body and soul are the same. The Gita's conclusion is that the non-dual truth is Krishna, the Absolute. The Gita's conclusion is that the non-dual truth is Krishna, the Absolute Supreme Being. But Dr. Radhakrishnan has somehow discovered another second being within Krishna. This discovery then converts Dr. Radhakrishnan into a believer in dualism. The manifestation of the Absolute Truth who resides in every jiva's heart is lucidly described by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavad Gita 10.8, Lord Krishna explains who the being residing in every jiva's heart is. Aham sarvasya prabhavo matak sarvam avartate itimat bhavajantimam buddha bhava samanvita. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. And later in the Gita 15:15 he says, Sarvasya chaham ridi sarvishto matasmiti jnanam apohanam cha raishcha sarvaham eva vedyo vedanta krid veda videva chaham. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. The wise men with perfect knowledge, that is, those who have purified their materialistic intelligence and are thus situated in spiritual knowledge, cannot understand Lord Krishna as the source of everything. Unless the intellect is purified and spiritualized, even the most erudite philosopher and the greatest mystic yogi will become perplexed in trying to understand Lord Krishna. As the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 7.3, Yatatamapi siddhanam ma kaschin mam veti tattvata. Of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. The Supreme Lord's name, form, qualities, pastimes, associates, and paraphernalia are all of the same spiritual nature. In fact, anything in relation to Lord Krishna is non-different from him. As the Padma Purana states, Namachintamani Krishna Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purna Shuddho Nitya Mukto Vinatvam Nama Namino. The holy name of Krishna is transcendently blissful. It bestows all spiritual benediction, for it is Krishna himself, the reservoir of all pleasure. Krishna's name is complete, and it is the form of all transcendental mellows. It is not a material name under any condition, and it is no less powerful than Krishna himself. Since Krishna's name is not contaminated by the material qualities, there is no question of its being involved with Maya. Krishna's name is always liberated and spiritual. It is never conditioned by the laws of material nature. This is because the name of Krishna and Krishna himself are identical. Only saintly souls can perceive the truth of these statements. Those whose intelligence has been corrupted by Mayavadi philosophy cannot understand. In general, monists cannot grasp the intricate philosophy of non-dualism. So Dr. Radhakrishnan has spun out of his imagination a theory by which he tries to establish dualism in non-dualism. When Dr. Radhakrishnan writes that we must surrender to the unborn, beginningless, eternal, who speaks through Krishna, he implies that it is the impersonal Brahman within Krishna who is speaking about surrender. Once it is established that the impersonal Brahman can speak, then he must also possess the instrument of speech, namely the tongue. Thus we see that Dr. Radhakrishnan's whole concept of impersonalism is immediately undermined. There is sufficient evidence in the scriptures to conclude that one who talks can also walk. And a being capable of speaking and walking must be endowed with all the senses, then he must also be able to perform other activities such as eating and sleeping. So how can Dr. Radhakrishnan claim that his beginningless eternal object is impersonal? In his introductory essay on page 62, Dr. Radhakrishnan writes, "When we are emptied of ourself, God takes possession of us. The obstacles to this God possession are our own virtues, pride, knowledge, our subtle demands, and our unconscious assumptions and prejudices." From his own arguments, we can safely surmise that Dr. Radhakrishnan, due to his carelessness and previous upbringing, is seeing a difference between Lord Krishna's body and his soul. He is still not free from false ego, that is, emptied of self. Therefore, his virtues, pride, knowledge, subtle demands, and unconscious assumptions and prejudices are all preventing him from understanding the transcendental truth. He must have been brought up in an atmosphere of Mayavad thought. For this reason, he was unable to grasp the truth. I'll read to the end of the section. Sripad Shankaracharya, the follower and propagator of Mayavad philosophy, proved that the material world was an illusion, mithya, and so he diligently pursued the path of austerity and renunciation, and he stressed it in his teachings. He did not waste valuable time trying to lord it over this illusory material world, but if he were to see the present condition of the philosophy he propounded, perhaps he would be ashamed. We have no doubt that Dr. Radhakrishnan was influenced by him. This is evident from his writings, yet in his introductory essay, page 25, he writes, "The emphasis of the Gita is on the Supreme as the personal God, who creates the perceptible world by his nature, Prakriti. He resides within the heart of every being. He is the enjoyer and Lord of sacrifice. He stirs our heart to devotion and grants our prayers. He is the source and retainer of values. He enters into personal relations with us in worship and prayer." After writing this and thus accepting the real purport of the Gita, how can Dr. Radhakrishnan later state that Lord Krishna's body and soul are different? Such an idea must be a result of his materialistic education. What a strange monism he propounds, in which the absolute truth, the non-dual supreme being, is supposedly separate from his inner existence. Can Dr. Radhakrishnan explain these obvious flaws in his philosophy? When the Supreme Lord himself is present in everyone's heart as the omniscient supersoul, then who else can sit in his heart? See, Prabhupada is saying, if Krishna is within everybody's heart, then what is Dr. Radhakrishnan saying that somebody else sits in Krishna's heart? What is this? In the Gita, Lord Krishna himself speaks about his transcendental qualities, making statements that Dr. Radhakrishnan, armed with his material erudition, has made but a feeble attempt to contradict. Through such foolishness, Dr. Radhakrishnan has made a show of spreading education, but in fact he has preached untruth. Brahman Paramatma, the Supersoul, and Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all three are the same non-dual Supreme Absolute. It would be ridiculous to say that Dr. Radhakrishnan is ignorant of the subject, yet we fail to see the logic in his claim that when the Supreme Lord incarnates, he comes under the sway of Maya. The Lord unequivocally states in the Gita that when he appears, he does so in his original transcendental form. Hence, there can be no difference between him and his body. The Lord further states that his appearance, activities, and so on are all transcendental beyond the realm of matter. He is eternal, supremely pure, the original Supreme Personality of Godhead and Supreme Brahman. We all agree that the Jiva is covered by Maya, but if the Supreme Brahman or Para-Brahman is also covered by Maya, then is Maya superior to Para-Brahman? So I was stuck on this section, which begins the subtitle, Lord Krishna is the Supreme Controller Godhead. We can begin reading there tomorrow. And just as a final comment, Prabhupada points out that very nicely how Dr. Radhakrishnan is actually confused in his understanding of the Supreme Lord. He is trying to be a non-dualist. This type of philosophy that he propounds is technically called Advaita Vedanta. There are many people who consider themselves Advaitists. So Dvaita means dual, two. And when you put A in front, it means not. So not dual. Or in other words, the Vedanta, or the philosophy of oneness. So this is his claim, that he's a philosopher of the oneness of transcendence. And yet, when confronted with Krishna, the personality of Godhead, then while on the one hand he's writing that Krishna is the personal form of God, and yet it's like he's giving that with one hand, but yet with the other hand he tries to take it away by saying it is not to Krishna whom we should surrender, but the unborn, beginningless, eternal within Krishna. So now Prabhupada has nicely explained the real meaning of non-dualism, that Krishna is, yes, he is the supreme non-dual Parabrahman. That means he is God as person, supreme person, Bhagavan. That is the personal form of the Supreme Absolute. And he is God as Paramatma, the all-pervading Super Soul. And also, he is the impersonal Brahman. There is no duality between these three features. They are all one. So that is the real understanding of Advaita. This is very expert logic and argument. He's pulled the legs out from underneath this Radha Krishna. And it is Radha Krishna who is creating duality by saying there is a difference between Krishna's inner self and his outer self. So this is actually, we could accuse him of being a Dvaita philosopher, a dualist philosopher. Now, the reason for this will actually be explained a little later by Prabhupada. That you see these philosophers, they have to have some audience. They have to keep their audience to which they propound their philosophy. So the audience, the pious population of India, they all accept Krishna as the Supreme Lord. They have this simple, straightforward, devotional understanding that the person Krishna is God. And they don't care for this philosophical jugglery which points to the impersonal Brahman. So philosophers like Dr. Radhakrishnan, they have to maintain a respect, or an official respect for that sense of devotion. So they have to fit in the personality of Krishna somewhere. So on the one hand they're saying, yes, Krishna, this is the beauty of Bhagavad Gita, that God comes as a person and speaks to his disciple. We can surrender, devote ourselves to him like this. They find that they cannot get away with what they really want to do, and that is to just erase the personality of Godhead completely. Erase him from the scriptural understanding and just leave voidism and impersonalism. So this type of thinking, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master, called this the logical fallacy of the half-old, half-young hen. So the story is that there was a Muslim, a very poor Muslim, Bengali Muslim, who had one hen. And he needed money, so he took this hen to the marketplace, the bazaar. And he wanted to sell this hen there. Now he was so poor that he'd never ever gone to the bazaar before, because he had neither money to buy anything nor anything to sell there. So he had no experience of what goes on in the bazaar. He just knows you go there, you bring something to sell, and people give you money for it. So he first thought, before I try to sell this, I should see how it is done. So he saw that there were farmers and merchants, and they were offering such goods as ghee and tamarind and rice And he noticed that these particular items, ghee, tamarind, and rice, that the older that they were advertised, the more old they were, the more aged, then the bigger price they were fetching. Because just like you have experience in the West too, there are certain items, actually, which we can't mention. But because in Western supermarkets, the items that are considered better when they're older are all naturally. She's a great grandmother already. She's laid so many generations of eggs, and so many chickens have hatched and grown up and died, and yet she's still living. So she's very valuable hen, very dear to our family. We've had her in our family for a good long time. I received this hen from my father, and he received it from his father. So this hen, therefore, we're asking a very good price. So when people saw, here's a man with a hen, they naturally came up and wanted to see what kind of hen this is and what is the price. But when they heard this this presentation, they immediately just walked away. What is this old hen? So he was going to the market every weekend, and every weekend he was coming back with the hen to his home. And this went on for 1 year. And finally a friend of his said, you know, you're making a big mistake. You should not say that this hen is old, because old hens no one's interested in. People want to buy young hens, what is known as, they're called spring chickens. It means they're less than 1 year old. They were hatched last spring. So you have to advertise your hen in this way. And then the man thought, well, what a fix I've got myself in. Because for 1 year I've been at the marketplace saying, this is an old hen. And now if I said she's a great grandmother, had so many chicks, laid so many eggs. And now if I come and say she's a virgin, never laid one egg, people will think I'm a real fool. So then he thought, I know what I'll do. And so next weekend he went to the market and he proclaimed, this is a very nice hen. She's half old and half young. Then people really thought he was a fool. So like that, like Prabhupada mentions, Dr. Radhakrishnan is trying to create a philosophy of dualism within non-dualism. Because the non-dualism alone, the impersonalism, he's found to be not sufficient. It's not enough. So then he's had to make room for the personal aspect of God. But he's done it in such a way, it's like saying, this hen is half old and half young. So the perfect understanding of the personal and impersonal features of the Lord is given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Achincha Veda Veda Tattva philosophy. So anyway, we will be reading more about this tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada will explain to us about that philosophy, Achincha Veda Veda Tattva. Now we will go on to the Krishna book. I've been reading chapters concerning the arrival of Akrura to Vrindavan. Akrura is a great devotee of Lord Krishna, but he was also a confidant, an associate of the evil demon Kamsa, who was ruling over Mathura. And Kamsa, of course, was fearing Lord Krishna, that this son of Vasudeva would be the cause of my death. So he had been trying in so many ways to kill Krishna by sending demons, and Krishna had been killing these demons one after the other. So when the evil King Kamsa was told by Narada of Krishna's actual identity, that he is the one who is destined to kill you, and all your efforts to get rid of him have failed. So then Kamsa put together a master plan. He thought, let me send Akrura, who is dear to Krishna. Akrura can persuade Krishna to come to Mathura, and then I will lay a whole series of traps for Krishna. He'll come into my grip, and I'll be able to dispatch him here in my own capital city. So now we shall read what happens when Lord Krishna comes to the city of Mathura. When Akrura was offering his prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord disappeared from the water, exactly as an expert dramatic actor changes his dress and assumes his original feature. After the Vishnu Murti disappeared, Akrura got out of the water. Finishing the rest of his ritualistic performance, he went near the chariot of Balaram and Krishna and was struck with wonder. Krishna asked whether he had seen something wonderful within the water or in space. Akrura said, "My dear Lord, all wonderful things are happening within this world, either in the sky or in the water or on the land." My dear Lord, all wonderful things that are happening within this world, either in the sky or in the water or on the land, are factually appearing in your universal form. So when I have seen you, what wonderful things have I not seen? This statement confirms the Vedic version, that one who knows Krishna knows everything, and one who has seen Krishna has seen everything, regardless of how wonderful a thing may be. My dear Lord, Akrura continued, there cannot be anything more wonderful than your transcendental form. When I have seen your transcendental form, what left is there to see? After saying this, Akrura immediately started the chariot. By the end of the day, they had almost reached the precincts of Mathura. When passing from Vrindavan to Mathura, all passers-by along the way who saw Lord Krishna and Balaram could not help but look at them again and again. In the meantime, the other inhabitants of Vrindavan, headed by Nanda and Upananda, had already reached Mathura by going through the forests and rivers, and they were awaiting the arrival of Krishna and Balaram. Upon reaching the entrance of Mathura, Krishna and Balaram got down from the chariot and shook hands with Akrura. Krishna informed Akrura, "You may go home now, because we shall enter Mathura along with our associates." Akrura replied, "My dear Lord, I cannot go to Mathura alone, leaving you aside. I am your surrendered servant. Please do not try to avoid me. Please come along with me, with your elder brother and cowherd boyfriends, and sanctify my house. My dear Lord, if you come, my home will be sanctified by the dust of your lotus feet. The water emanating from the perspiration of your lotus feet, namely the Ganges, purifies everyone, including the forefathers, the fire god, and all other demigods. King Bali Maharaj has become famous simply by washing your lotus feet, and all his relatives have achieved the heavenly planet due to his contact with the Ganges water. Bali Maharaj himself enjoyed all material opulences and later on was elevated to the highest exalted position of liberation. The Ganges water not only sanctifies the three worlds, but is carried on the head of Lord Shiva. O Supreme Lord of all lords, O Master of this universe, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you." On hearing this, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna replied, "Akrura, I shall surely come to your home with my elder brother Balaram, but only after killing all the demons who are envious of the Jadu dynasty. In this way I shall please all my relatives." Akrura became a little disappointed by these words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he could not disregard the order. He therefore entered Mathura and informed Kamsa about the arrival of Krishna, and then he entered his own home. After the departure of Akrura, Lord Krishna, Balaram, and the cowherd boys entered Mathura to see the city. They observed that the gate of Mathura was made of first-class marble, very well constructed, and the doors were made of pure gold. There were gorgeous gardens all around, and the whole city was encircled by cannons, so that no enemy could enter very easily. They saw that all the crossings of the roads were decorated with gold, and there were many rich men's houses, all appearing symmetrical, as if constructed by one engineer. The houses were decorated with costly jewels, and each and every house had nice compounds of trees, fruits, and flowers. The gardens, corridors, and verandas of the houses were decorated with silk cloth and embroidery work in jewels and pearls. In front of the balcony windows were pigeons and peacocks walking and cooing. All the grain dealers' shops within the city were decorated with different kinds of flowers and garlands, newly grown grass and blossoming roses. The central doors of the houses were decorated with water pots filled with water, and a mixture of water and yogurt was sprinkled all around. There were flowers decorated with burning lamps of different sizes over the doors, and there were also decorations of fresh mango leaves and silk festoons on all the doors of the houses. When the news spread that Krishna, Balaram, and the cowherd boys were within Mathura city, all the inhabitants gathered, and the ladies and girls immediately went up to the roofs of the houses to see them. They had been awaiting the arrival of Krishna and Balaram with great anxiety, and in their extreme eagerness to see Krishna and Balaram, the ladies did not dress themselves very properly. Some of them placed their dress in the wrong place. Some anointed their eyes only on one side only, and some wore ankle bells only on one leg or only one earring. Thus, in great haste, not even decorated properly, they came to see Krishna from the roofs. Some of them had been taking their lunch, but as soon as they heard that Krishna and Balaram were in the city, they left their eating and ran to the roof. Some of them were in the bathroom taking their baths, but without properly finishing their baths, they came to see Krishna and Balaram. Passing by very slowly and smiling, Lord Krishna immediately stole their hearts. He was the husband of the goddess of fortune, passed through the street like an elephant. For a long time, the women of Mathura had heard about Krishna and Balaram and their uncommon characteristics, and they were very much attracted and eager to see them. Now, when they actually saw Krishna and Balaram passing on the street and saw them sweetly smiling, the ladies' joy reached the point of ecstasy. When they actually saw them with their eyes, they took Krishna and Balaram within their hearts and began to embrace them to their fullest desire. Their hair stood up in ecstasy. They had heard of Krishna, but they had never seen him, and now their longing was relieved. After going up on the roofs of the palaces of Mathura, the ladies began to shower flowers upon Krishna and Balaram. When the brothers were passing through the streets, all the brahmanas in the neighborhood also went out with sandalwood and flowers and respectfully welcomed them to the city. All the residents of Mathura began to talk amongst themselves about the elevated and pious activities of the people of Vrindavan. The residents of Mathura were surprised at the pious activities the cowherd men in Vrindavan must have performed in their previous lives to be able to see Krishna and Balaram daily as cowherd boys. When Krishna and Balaram were passing in this way, they saw a washerman and a dyer of clothing. Krishna was pleased to ask him for some nice clothing. He also promised that if the washerman would deliver the nicest dyed cloth to him, he would be very happy, and all good fortune would be his. Krishna was neither a beggar nor was he in need of clothing, but by this request he indicated that everyone should be ready to offer to Krishna whatever he wants. That is the purpose of Krishna consciousness. Unfortunately, this washerman was a servant of Kamsa and therefore could not appreciate the demand of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the effect of bad association. He could have immediately delivered the clothing to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who promised him all good fortune. But being a servant of Kamsa, the sinful demon could not accept the offer. Instead of being pleased, he was very angry and refused the Lord's request, saying, "How is it that you are asking clothing which is meant for the king?" The washerman then began to instruct Krishna and Balaram. "My dear boys, in the future don't be so impudent as to ask for things which belong to the king. Otherwise you will be punished by the government men. They will arrest you and punish you, and you will be in difficulty. I have practical experience of this fact. Anyone who unlawfully wants to use the king's property is very severely punished." On hearing this, Lord Krishna, the son of Devaki, became very angry at the washerman, and striking him with the upper portion of his hand, he separated the man's head from his body. The washerman fell down dead on the ground. In this way, Lord Krishna confirmed the statement that every limb of his body is capable of doing everything he likes. Without a sword, but simply with his hand, he cut off the head of the washerman. This is proof that the Supreme Lord is omnipotent. If he wants to do something, he can do it without extraneous help. After this ghastly incident, the employees of the washerman immediately dispersed, leaving their clothing. Krishna and Balaram took possession of it and dressed according to their choice. The rest of the clothes were offered to the cowherd boys, who also used them as they desired.